Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is attend. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The verb attend can mean to be present at an event, meeting, or other type of gathering. Related to that is the second definition. Attend can be used to describe the action of going regularly to an educational, religious, social, or clinical institution. So you might think with the second definition about the way you attend class. Do you go every day? Some people talk about attending services related to their faith or religion. Other people will talk about attending medical appointments. Right? So all of those things can fit into that second definition. A third way to use the verb attend can mean to deal with. Many times when we use deal with, it's something rather unpleasant, maybe something kind of challenging. It usually doesn't have a really happy, positive feeling or connotation to it, right? It's kind of like, I have to attend to this, or I have to deal with this particular issue. A fourth way the verb attend gets used can mean to go or stay with as a companion, a nurse, or a servant. Sometimes if you read older literature, you might hear of a servant attending to a king or queen or other kind of member of nobility, right? That fourth definition connects to that. For now, you should know that attend is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, all you need to do is add ing, and that makes attending. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by adding ed. Now our base verb, attend, ends with a d sound. And when we add ed to the end of a verb that ends with a d sound, not always just a d letter, but a d sound, it means that we're going to add an extra syllable to the verb. Right? So it should sound like this: attended, attended. Now, I do have a phrasal verb for us to discuss, and that is to attend to. There are a couple ways that this phrasal verb can be used. So the first would be to look after or give practical help and care to someone or something. An example of this might be, the paramedics attended to injured pedestrians. Right? So pedestrians would be people not inside of motor vehicles, not in cars. Right? So they are providing care, maybe helping them deal with some type of injury. A second way to use attend to goes back to an earlier definition, to deal with something. An example of this might be, we must attend to this urgent matter. Maybe you've heard something like this in a work situation, right? There's some type of emergency, right? We need to fix the problem, or we need to deal with it right away. A third way to use attend to can mean to pay attention to something. An example of this might be, the students haven't attended to a word of this lecture. So another way of saying they haven't been paying attention. So I know as a teacher, sometimes I have this feeling that whatever we're talking about, it's just not connecting. It's maybe not interesting others. And if there are any teachers watching this video, you've probably had that feeling at least once in your time as an instructor. But for now, I hope you will attend to our discussion of a couple different verb tenses. Today, we're going to practice the past progressive and the simple present. Let's start with the past progressive. We use this verb tense to talk about an action that was ongoing or that was continuing during a period in the past. Now, many teachers, textbooks, and even other YouTube videos will call this the past continuous, and that's just fine. Past progressive, past continuous mean exactly the same thing. But the reason I like saying past progressive with my students is I try and encourage them to remember two P's, two parts to make our verb. Okay? So we're going to be using a past form of be. And this means we need to pay attention to our subject because there are two forms of be in the past. If our subject is I, he, she, or it, we're going to use was and then that ing form of the verb. But if our subject is you, we, or they, we're going to use were, W-E-R-E, and then the ing form of the verb. Let's take a look at an example sentence. He was attending a party when he received an urgent call from his boss. Okay? This is a really common pattern we can see in English. So what I hope you'll notice here is that we have one verb in our past progressive, right? Was attending, right? And we have a second verb, received. That verb is in the simple past tense. And the idea is we have one action that was continuing or that was ongoing, and it gets interrupted by a second action. That interrupting verb is always in the simple past tense. So you might start noticing that as you listen or as you read other accounts about past activities or past events. Now, if you want to make a negative past progressive sentence, again, we're going to pay attention to our subject. We're going to use was or were, whichever form matches our subject, right? Then not, and then the ing form of the verb. Okay? You might also notice was not being shortened into the contraction wasn't, or were not being shortened into the contraction weren't. Here's an example sentence. I wasn't attending to anything important. What do you need? Right? Maybe this is something a coworker says to you as you maybe feel a little hesitant to interrupt them, right? They're just saying I wasn't really dealing with or doing something that was vastly important. So ask your question. How can I help you? Finally, we can make yes or no questions in the past progressive. To do this, we start with was or were, then we have our subject, and then the base verb. An example of this. Were you attending school last fall? Okay. So here we're really concerned, not did you just go one time, but was this kind of an ongoing or continuing action? Now let's talk a little bit about the simple present. We use the simple present verb tense to talk about habits, routines, and facts. This is another verb tense where we need to pay attention to our subject. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, we're just going to use the base verb with no suffixes, no special endings in the affirmative. But if our subject is he, she, or it, we need to add an S to the end of the verb. You can see that in my example here. She always attends class. Here, I'm describing someone's habit or routine. I'm noting that they consistently are present. Right? They're not missing on a regular basis. Now let's talk about making negative simple present sentences. To do this, again, you pay attention to your subject. If your subject is I, you, we, or they, use do not and then the base verb. If the subject is he, she, or it, use does not and then the base verb. You might also see contractions, so do not becomes don't and does not becomes doesn't. Here's an example. The company doesn't attend trade shows. Right? So it might feel like going to these big conventions where there are many companies trying to sell their products or services. It's just not a good use of our time or a good use of our money. We're going to do other types of advertising or marketing. To make a yes or no question, In the simple present, again, we start with do or does. Then we're going to have a subject and then the base verb. I always like to point out to students, notice the only time I'm adding an S to the end of the verb is in the affirmative with he, she, or it. I'm not adding it in the negative, and I'm not adding it to my yes or no question. Let's take a look at that last example. Does a family member attend doctor appointments with her? So again, maybe there's someone that needs a little extra help or support, right? So here we're inquiring, does someone go with her? Are they present at these appointments? Now, let's take a look at some words that are related to our verb attend. And the first word we're going to discuss is the noun attendance. The noun attendance can have a couple different meanings. One way is to refer to the action or state of going regularly to something or being present at a particular place or event. An example of this might be, your attendance hasn't been consistent the last few weeks. This might be something a teacher has to say to one of their students, right? You're not regularly coming to class is what that sentence means. Now, a second way to use the noun attendance is to refer to the number of people who are present at a particular event, function, or meeting. An example of this. Nebraska volleyball fans set an attendance record with 92,000 fans last fall. True sentence, 92,000 people came to watch a volleyball match in Nebraska. Actually, it was a little over. I'm forgetting the exact number, but 92,009, I believe, was the record, right? That's how many people were present. Another related word you might encounter is the noun attendant. This is commonly used in job descriptions and positions or roles. So it's talking about a person who has been employed to provide some type of service. It could be service to the public, it could be service in a particular place. Let's take a look at a common example. He's worked as a flight attendant for over 20 years. Right? Flight attendants are people who work on planes to keep people comfortable and safe during flights. Another related word you might encounter is the noun attendee. This is a person who is present and many times participates in some type of meeting or gathering. An example of this. Attendees appreciated the opportunity to ask more questions. Sometimes you hear things like that related to public meetings, where a board takes into and allows others to speak, express their opinions before they make a decision. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.